The rescue in the firestorm, the sky burned red above a strange alien planet. Huge fireballs rained down, tearing through the jungle, leaving smoke and flames behind. Jack, a young human pilot, was running through the thick vines and alien trees, his chest heaving, lungs burning. His ship had crash-landed only an hour ago, and already the planet felt like it was trying to kill him. His boots slid across wet ground as another flaming rock hit the earth behind him with a deafening boom. He ducked behind a rock, heart racing. "Great," he muttered. "I'm stranded in hell." Jack wasn't a soldier. He wasn't a hero. He was just a cargo pilot taking a job to pay off his ship's debts. He had no idea why this planet was marked safe on the star maps. Nothing about this place felt safe. Then he heard it, a scream. It wasn't just any scream. It was high-pitched, sharp, full of fear and pain, and it wasn't human. Jack peeked around the rock. Through the smoke and heat shimmer, he saw her. An alien girl, young, slim, with silvery blue skin that shimmered even through the ash. Her long hair whipped in the wind. She was trapped beneath a fallen tree, flames closing in. She cried out again, her voice trembling with pain. Jack hesitated. It could be trap. He'd heard stories, planets that lured humans in with fake signals, creatures that looked innocent but weren't. But then her eyes met his. Through the smoke, they were glowing purple, wide with terror and hope. "Damn it," Jack whispered and jumped from behind the rock. He sprinted across the burning field, coughing, arms shielding his face. A fireball hit nearby, throwing him off balance, but he kept going. The girl turned her head and screamed again, thinking the fire would eat her alive. She didn't see him coming until he was beside her, lifting the heavy log off her small frame. She gasped, staring at him in shock. You're not one of us," she whispered. Jack didn't reply. He was too busy trying to drag her to safety. Ground shook behind them. Trees were falling. The fire was closing in. Jack threw her arm over his shoulder. "Move, we've got to go." She limped beside him, her leg bleeding. They ran, half stumbling, as the flames chased them. Her breathing was ragged and her feet barely touched the ground. Finally, Jack spotted a shallow cave in the side of a small cliff. He pushed her inside, collapsing beside her just as the fire swept past, roaring like a monster just outside the stone walls. Both of them lay there, panting in the smoky dark. After a moment, she sat up and looked at him. Really looked. "You saved me," she said quietly. Jack shrugged, brushing ash from his face. "Couldn't just let you burn." She touched his chest lightly, as if confirming he was real. "You're human, last I checked." "Yeah," he gave her a tired smile. "Name's Jack." Her voice was soft. "Vira." The flames outside finally began to die down, but the silence between them grew heavy. She stared at him strangely, as if measuring something important. Her cheeks darkened with color, almost like a blush. "What?" he asked. She hesitated, then whispered, "In my culture, saving a maiden during a firestorm is a sacred act." Jack blinked. "Okay." Her voice was even quieter now. "It means you've accepted the bond that we must marry." Jack stared at her. "Wait, what?" Before she could explain, movement echoed outside the cave. Figures stepped out of the smoke, tall alien warriors with glowing armor, strange weapons, and sharp eyes. All of them looked at Jack. None looked happy. One stepped forward, staring directly at him. "You have saved the High Daughter," he said in a deep Rumbling voice, the bond is sealed. Jack got to his feet quickly. Hold on. I didn't agree to anything. Varia stood. As well, looking between him and the warriors, her voice trembled. Please. Don't fight them. It's not just a rule. It's a law, ancient and unbreakable. Jack's mind raced. What had he just walked into? He saved a girl's life. Now an entire alien culture expected him to marry her, and they didn't look like the type to take no for an answer. Jack stood still as the alien warriors circled him, their armor glowing in patterns he didn't understand. The leader had a long staff in his hand made of some crystal that pulsed like a heartbeat. Behind him the smoke still curled from the burning forest, but inside the clearing all eyes were on the human. Varia stood beside him, eyes low, hands folded over her chest. She didn't look proud, she looked scared. Jack's voice was low. Can someone please explain what's going on? The warrior leader raised his chin. You saved the life of the High Daughter during the sacred firestorm. By our oldest law, she now belongs to you, and you to her. I didn't mean to. Jack started. Intent is not required, the alien replied coldly. Only action. Jack turned to Varia. Tell him I'm not staying. I have a ship. I need to go. She looked up at him, guilt in her eyes. If you leave now, it will bring shame on me, on them. They won't allow it. He looked around. The warriors weren't moving, but their hands rested on weapons. Jack's fists clenched. He wasn't a fighter, but he'd been in rough places before. He knew what this felt like. A cage. The warriors marched them toward the village. Stone walls, covered in vines, hanging lights made of glowing fruit, alien symbols carved into wood and stone. Dozens of villagers came out, whispering in their native tongue. Some pointed, others dropped to one knee. He heard one word again and again. Bonded. Old women began singing. Children threw petals at his feet, and Varia, she just walked beside him like she was sleepwalking. They reached a large dome in the center of the village. Inside, the floor was soft like moss, and there was a low pool in the center. Several alien women surrounded Varia and pulled her away. Wait, Jack called. An elder woman approached him. Her face was painted with gold dust, and her long fingers touched his shoulder gently. You will be prepared, she said. Tonight the joining. Jack stepped back. Jojo joining. As in no, this is a mistake in that. This wasn't what I signed up for. Elder tilted her head. You saved her with no thought of reward. That is the rarest kind of honor. You cannot break the bond now. They gave him robes white, soft, marked with strange runes. Someone washed his hands with scented oil. Someone else brushed his hair. Jack sat there stunned. No one was listening to him. He looked around the room, trying to think. If he ran now, would they chase him? Would they kill him? Would they hurt her? He didn't even know her, but he had seen the way she looked at him when he pulled her from the fire. Not fear, something else. That night, the ceremony began. Drums echoed in the jungle. Fires burned in large stone bowls. The villagers sang in a low, deep rhythm. Varia appeared in the middle of the circle. Her gown shimmered like starlight. Her hair was braided with thin silver threads. She didn't look like a prisoner now. She looked like royalty. And beside her, Jack stood in silence, surrounded by glowing eyes and sharp smiles. The high priest raised his arms. Two hearts, one fire, one fate, one bond. Everyone echoed the words. One bond. Jack tried again. Please, I'm Not one of you, I'm not ready, I didn't mean to take her from you, but Varia suddenly stepped forward. She looked into his eyes. You didn't take me, she said. You gave me a second life. You don't understand our ways, I know that. But the bond is real now, I feel it. It ties my soul to yours. Jack felt the heat of the fire on his face. Her words hit him harder than the smoke ever did. The priest held out a silver ring, seal the bond. Varia extended her hand. Jack stared at her hand for a long moment. If he took it, there was no turning back. If he refused, he looked at the crowd. Warriors ready to strike, elders who wouldn't bend, a people who saw this act as sacred. Va was waiting. His hand lifted slowly, but then in the crowd a child screamed. Jack's head snapped around. The villagers turned surprised. Smoke was rising again. From the far jungle, more figures were coming. But these were not villagers. War spiked armor rode large beasts and held chains in their claws. Raiders, alien pirates. The village was under attack. Screams echoed through the village as fires lit the night sky once more. Jack didn't hesitate. He grabbed Varia's hand and pulled her behind the central stone dome. The alien raiders had already reached the outer homes, smashing walls, dragging villagers out in chains. Huge beasts roared and stomped through the gates, their riders yelling in harsh, guttural voices. The bonding ceremony was over before it could finish, and now they were under siege. Do they come often? Jack asked, ducking under a low wall. Va's face was pale. No, never. During sacred nights. This is a warning or a hunt, Jack muttered. He peeked around the corner. One of the raiders lifted a screaming child by the arm, tossing him into a cage. Jack's hands clenched. He'd seen things like this before on backwater planets. Lawless moons, pirates who didn't care who you were, only what you were worth. He turned to Vira. We can't fight them all. We need to leave, but the others will come back, he promised. But first, I have to get you out. He wasn't thinking like a stranger anymore. He wasn't thinking about marrying a girl he barely knew. He was just thinking, I saved her once, I'll do it again. Jack led Varia through a broken fence behind one of the storage buildings. Smoke filled the air. Explosions shook the ground. Screams were everywhere. They ran through the forest trail down to the crash site where Jack's ship still lay in pieces. The hull was scorched and twisted, but the cockpit remained mostly intact. Jack had already started working on repairs before all this madness began. Now he just hoped the emergency lift systems would power up. He threw open the side panel and yanked out a power core. Come on, he whispered, jamming it into the boot panel. The ship who flickered. Then sparked. Lights came to life, faint but working. Vira stared in awe. Your ship, it breathes. Jack gave her a small grin. She's old, but she's not dead yet. He jumped into the seat and started the reboot process. Varia climbed in after him, watching his fingers fly over the controls. Do you know how to fly this thing? He laughed dryly. I don't know how to marry a space princess either, but here we are behind them. Trees shook, the sound of beasts. They were coming. Jack cursed under his breath and slammed the ignition. Ship groaned, lifted a few inches. Then sank back down. Not enough power, Jack said, checking the levels. One more core. He ran to the back panel and ripped out another emergency cell from the floor storage. As he did, Varia stepped outside and froze. She saw Something, a small figure behind the trees, a young girl, just a child. Limping, crying, chased by one of the raiders. Varia didn't think, she ran. Vira! Jack yelled, dropping the core. She reached the child just as the beast charged. She grabbed the girl and turned, her body shielding her from the whip. Crack that followed, the beast rider raised his weapon again, but Jack tackled him from behind, knocking him off the saddle. The alien growled and swung. Jack ducked and punched hard, right into the thing's jaw. It stumbled back. Very pulled the girl to safety. The raider stood again, enraged. Before it could charge again, Jack grabbed the flare gun from his belt and fired straight into the beast's face. It reared back, howling, throwing its rider into a tree. Jack grabbed Vira's hand again. Now we go. They rushed back to the ship. This time with the second core in place. The engines roared louder. The ship lifted off the ground, slowly wobbling at first, then rising higher. Below, raiders poured into the clearing, but it was too late. The ship broke through the treetops and into the open sky. Inside, Jack collapsed into the pilot's seat, breathing hard. Vira sat across from him, holding the child in her lap. The little girl was safe. Her big eyes stared at the human with wonder. You saved her too, Vira said softly. Jack leaned back. Tired? I guess I'm just collecting problems today. She smiled a little. No, you're collecting bonds. Jack stared at her for a long moment. She wasn't just a girl anymore. She was brave, kind, selfless. He didn't know what to say. He looked out the window as the stars came into view, but something inside him whispered, you don't want to leave her anymore. The stars drifted past the ship's window like glowing dust. Jack sat in silence, staring into the black sky, his hands resting on the controls. Varia sat behind him, the rescued child asleep in her lap for the first time in hours. The world wasn't burning, but Jack's mind was. He had escaped the fire, raiders, and the forced marriage, but he didn't feel free. Not really. He turned his head. Where do you want me to drop you off? Varia looked up slowly. There's nowhere to go now. The village is gone. My people will scatter. Some may not survive. Jack swallowed. I'm sorry. She nodded gently. You saved me again, and the child, that means something to us. It means everything. Jack rubbed his face. Yeah, about that, I still don't get it. I saved someone and suddenly I'm married. That's a little fast, don't you think? Varia placed the child gently on a cushioned bench and walked toward him. She didn't smile. Her voice was quiet. Serious? You've never heard of the law of life debt? He raised an eyebrow. Nope, must have skipped that part in alien culture class. She sat on the edge of the control panel and looked at her hands. Our ancestors were once hunted long ago. We were weak, always running. Then one day a great warrior from the stars saved our tribe. Not because he had to, but because it was right. The tribe offered him their highest honor, bonding. He accepted. They say he changed our bloodline forever. Jack raised a brow. He was human. She looked up at him. Yes, and from then on, if someone saves a life during mortal danger, the bond must be offered. It's our oldest law to reject. It is a curse. Jack scoffed. A curse? Come on. She shook her head. Not magic, not superstition, but the spirit is damaged when life is given and then thrown away. A wound in the soul. It said people who break the bond never heal. They live but empty. Jack leaned Back, you really believe that, Varia? Looked into his eyes. Do you? He didn't answer. Not because he didn't know, but because deep down part of him already felt it when he thought about leaving her behind, when he tried to ignore what had happened. He didn't feel free. He felt hollow. You saved me from fire, she whispered, then again from death. That child too. How many lives must you carry before you understand? Jack stood and walked across the small room. Frustrated. I didn't do it for some ceremony or law. I did it because it was right. She followed him with her eyes. That's why it matters. He turned. What do you want from me, Vera? Just say it. She walked toward him slowly, carefully. I want you to stop running, not just from me, but from the truth. Jack's voice was low. And what truth is that? She stood in front of him, her silver blue skin glowing in the soft ship lights. That you were never meant to be alone. Jack's heart thud. Dead. She wasn't trying to trap him. She wasn't forcing anything. She was just asking him to see her. He turned back toward the console to hide his face. My ship's low on fuel. There's a trade station a few jumps from here. We'll rest there, get the kids some help, then figure things out. Beria nodded, and after Jack stared at the blinking lights, after he didn't know anymore. For once in his life, the stars didn't show him the way, but her voice did. Suddenly the child stirred. She mumbled something in Vera's language and reached for her. Peria bent down, brushing the girl's hair softly. You're safe now. Jack watched her. Gentle, calm, warm. She didn't belong in a firestorm or a prison. She belonged in light, and strangely, so did he. Maybe the law of life debt wasn't about ownership. Maybe it was about connection, about choosing to stay because leaving would be the real betrayal. He took a deep breath and looked at her. When we reach that station, he said, I won't leave, not unless you tell me to. Varia looked up, eyes shining. Then the bond is alive. Jack gave a tired smile. Yeah, maybe it is. Outside, the stars still moved, but now for the first time Jack didn't feel lost. He felt found. Trade station hung in orbit like a metal moon, quiet and gray, surrounded by small ships moving in and out like insects. Jack guided his shuttle toward Dock Bay 9, hands steady on the controls. Inside the ship, the little girl was still sleeping. The Rahia stood near the window, staring at the stars. Silent. They had been flying for hours with no trouble, but Jack had a bad feeling in his gut. The closer they got to the station, the worse it felt. As the ship landed with a soft thud, Jack turned to Varia. Stay close to me. These outer stations can be rough. Keep your hood up. She nodded and pulled the hood of her gray cloak over her silver blue hair. She looked strange in human clothes, but beautiful still, like a star trying to hide in the dark. Jack lifted the sleeping child into his arms and stepped out first. The dock smelled like fuel and dust. Aliens of all shapes walked by, heads down, eyes suspicious. Loud announcements echoed through the air in 3 different languages. Jack walked fast, eyes scanning the crowd. They reached the medical center without trouble. He placed the child gently into the arms of a nurse bot, explaining what happened. The machine took her inside, promising care and food. Varia's eyes followed the girl until the doors closed. She'll be all right, Jack said softly. Varia nodded, but she didn't smile. They walked into the open market area. Bright signs flashed over food stalls and repair shops. Jack picked up a small Scanner in a fuel cell, trading the last of his credits he didn't care. Getting out of here was all that mattered now. Then he froze out across the walkway. He saw them, two figures in dark armor. Spiked shoulders, red glass helmets. God. Raiders the same kind from the village. Attack, his heart stopped. Had they followed him, he grabbed Varia's hand and whispered, "Don't look now, but we have company." She tensed immediately. "They shouldn't be here," she whispered. "This is a protected zone." "Doesn't matter," Jack said. "They're watching us." They turned away casually and walked toward the hangar. Jack tried to stay calm, but his mind raced. He'd fought one raider before, barely survived, but if more came, they passed through the security gate, and that's when it happened. A blaring alarm rang out. Then dash boom, the sky above the station turned red as an explosion tore through the upper dome. The force shook the ground, screams erupted. Crowd scattered in panic. From above, ships dropped like knives. Raider dropcrafts, black, fast, deadly, pierced the station's defenses like paper. Jack pulled Varia behind a pillar as gunfire lit up the walkways. "They're not here to watch," he said. "They're here to take you." Varia's eyes widened. "Me? You're the High Daughter. Maybe they learned who you are, or maybe they just want revenge." Another explosion rocked the corridor. Jack pulled out a small blaster from under his coat and handed her a backup stun baton. "Can you use this?" She nodded and gripped the weapon tight. They ran through the chaos, down broken halls, past terrified aliens running in every direction. Lights flickered, smoke filled the air behind them. The raiders followed, yelling commands, dragging people in chains. "Again, back to the ship," Jack said. "If we can reach it, we're gone." They reached the dock bay and saw 3 raiders standing guard in front of the shuttle. Jack cursed. "They were waiting for you." Zaria looked around. "We'll have to fight." Jack checked his charge pack. "I've got 10 shots. I've got courage," she whispered. They moved together. Jack fired first, 2 shots fast. 1 raider went down. The others turned, charging forward. Varia swung her baton hard, striking one in the neck. It howled and stumbled. Jack shot the third in the leg, then kicked it down and stunned it cold. The path to the shuttle was clear, but more screams came from behind. Dozens more raiders. No time. They jumped into the cockpit. Jack slammed the hatch button. The doors closed just as a blade hit the side. Ship shook as it lifted. "Engines holding," Jack said, teeth clenched. Come on." The raiders fired from below. Shots cracked the ship's belly, but Jack hit the boosters and the ship roared forward, tearing out of the dock like a comet. They escaped. Again. Silence filled the cockpit. Smoke drifted from a burned panel. Sparks popped near Jack's foot, but they were alive. Vahia collapsed into the seat beside him, shaking. "They'll never stop, will they?" Jack looked at her, eyes steady. "Not until they're stopped." Her fingers trembled, but she placed her hand over his. "I trust you," she whispered. He didn't reply, but his hand didn't move either. The stars outside the shuttle blinked slowly, like calm breaths after chaos. Jack sat alone in the cockpit, eyes red from smoke and exhaustion. His hands rested on the flight controls, but the ship was in autopilot now. They had escaped. Again, he had fought again. He had survived again, but he wasn't sure how much longer that could last. Behind him, Varia was quiet. She hadn't spoken since they left the station hours ago. She sat in the back, wrapped in a blanket arms crossed, staring at the floor. Her silver hair was loose now, her glow dimmer than before. Jack kept glancing at her through the reflection. In the glass, he wanted to say something, anything, but the words felt heavy. Finally, he stood and walked to the back of the shuttle. You haven't eaten, he said, holding out a sealed food pack. She looked up slowly. I'm not hungry. He sat across from her. Me neither. They sat in silence. Just the quiet hum of the ship filled the air. After a while she spoke. You asked me before what I want from you. Jack nodded. She kept her eyes on the floor. I don't want you to feel trapped. I don't want to be a chain around your neck. You're not, Jack said quickly. She looked at him now, truly looked, but you haven't chosen either. You're still standing between two worlds, half in mine, half in yours. Jack leaned forward, elbows on his knees. Because I'm scared. She blinked, surprised by his honesty. He kept talking. Scared of giving up the life I knew, scared of committing to something I don't fully understand, scared that if I stay I'll lose myself. She didn't interrupt. And yet, Jack continued, when I think about leaving you, about watching you walk away and vanish into the stars, it hurts more than I expected, like something inside me is cracking. Varia's voice was soft. That's the bond, it's already formed. Jack sighed. Even if I never said yes. She shook her head. It doesn't always wait for words. Sometimes the heart decides first. He looked down. So what do I do? Decide, she said. Simply, not because you're forced, but because you want to. Jack looked out the small window beside them. He thought of Earth, of space stations and shady jobs, of cold nights in a tiny bunk with no one waiting. He thought of wandering stars and lonely meals. Then he looked at her. She had risked her life to protect a child. She had fought beside him. She had believed in him before even he did. I never belonged on Earth, Jack said quietly. Never had home, not really. Just jobs, just flying from one place to the next. No reason to stay. She watched him, listening carefully. But with you, he continued, I feel something I've never felt before. She tilted her head. What? He smiled just a little, like I matter. Her eyes shimmered and her voice trembled. You do to me, you do. The ship beeped. Jack stood and walked to the front. We're nearing an unclaimed moon, he said. Empty, peaceful. No colonies, no patrols. We can land and rest for a while. She nodded. That sounds perfect. They landed in a small valley of pale grass and silver trees. Strange birds flew overhead, their wings glowing under the low sun. The air was clean, the sky gentle. Jack set up a small tent beside the ship. He lit a fire using leftover wood from a broken crate and warmed a pot of food. Varia joined him, sitting close. For the first time in days they weren't running. The flames danced between them. You still scared? She asked softly. Jack looked at her. Yeah, but not of you. Of what then? He shrugged. Of finally having something to lose. She reached out and took his hand. Then let's not lose it. Jack looked down at their hands. That no more war cries. That no more firms. Just her and him and stars above. He squeezed her fingers gently. With you now, he said, not between worlds anymore. I choose this one. I choose you. Varia's eyes filled with quiet light. And beside the fire, in a place forgotten by maps, a human and an alien, once strangers from different skies, sat together, no longer afraid of what came next. The silver moon rose above The valley casting a soft light over the quiet land. The fire had burned low, just glowing embers. Now Jack sat beside Vira, her head resting gently on his shoulder, their fingers still laced together. They hadn't spoken for a while. They didn't need to. For the first time, silence wasn't heavy. It was peaceful, but peace doesn't last forever. The shuttle's console beeped. 3 short tones, a signal. Jack stood slowly, careful not to wake Vira. He walked to the cockpit, checked the screen, and narrowed his eyes. A message was blinking. Survivors located. Request assistance. Coordinates followed. He sighed and rubbed his face. Vira appeared in the doorway. What is it? Your people, he said. A few survived the attack. They're hiding in the deep forest zone. Low supplies, no ship. She walked to him, her voice soft but strong. We have to go. Jack nodded. Yeah, we do. They powered the ship and rose from the moon's quiet surface, slicing through the clouds like a promise. The stars guided them to the hidden zone where dense green trees stretched across the land like a sea of leaves. They landed gently near the signal source. When the hatch opened, a few tired figures came into view. Elders, wounded warriors, and 2 children. They froze when they saw Jack. But then Vira stepped forward. I'm alive, she said, voice clear. And this human, he is with me. The elders exchanged quiet looks. Jack helped pass out food and water. No one spoke to him at first, but no one raised a weapon either. Slowly, that was enough. One old woman limped forward and touched Vira's cheek. The bond still lives. Vira glanced back at Jack. Yes, she whispered. It does. The woman smiled. Then the stars are not done with us yet. They stayed 2 days in the forest clearing. Jack repaired a broken NBSP and NBSP tower. Vira treated wounds and comforted the lost children. Together, they helped the broken tribe breathe again. On the 3rd night, the elders gathered around the fire. They called Jack forward. You've done more than say a life, the High Elder said. You gave hope when we had none. Jack looked at them carefully. I didn't do it for reward. The elder nodded. That's why it matters. Another elder stood. We did not finish the ceremony before the bond was not fully sealed. You still have a choice, human. All eyes turned to Jack. He looked at Vira. She wasn't wearing her ceremonial robes. No lights, no music, just her tired, a little scarred, but still shining, still brave, still his dot. Jack stepped forward. His voice didn't shake. I choose her. I choose the bond, not because of a rule, but because I finally understand what it means. New robe was given to him, simple but warm. He wore it without protest. This time, no force, no pressure, just tradition and truth. Vira stood opposite him, a soft smile on her lips. The High Elder raised a new crystal ring under the stars and through fire. 2 hearts were tested. They did not break. Now they stand as one. Jack took Vira's hand. He slid the ring over her finger, and she did the same for him. At no roar of celebration followed dots. Quiet peace, the kind that says we made it. That night, in their small tent beneath the leaves, Jack looked up at the stars again. I spent my whole life flying, he said, never stopped to land. Vira curled against him, her voice a whisper. And now, Jack smiled. I'm done running. She placed her hand on his chest where his heartbeat calmed. You're home now. He closed his eyes. Finally at rest. Epilogue. 1 year later, the village had been rebuilt. New walls, new homes, a new way of life. But This time, humans and aliens lived side by side. Jack stood beside a worked, fixing a child's toy that blinked and spun in circles nearby. Very led a group of young girls in self-defense training. She laughed easily now. Peace had returned, but not by accident. It had been fought for. Earned. And in the center of it all stood a man who had never believed in fate until he saved a stranger, and she saved him. Right back. Now they stood as one, not because of fire or fear, but because love had grown strong and quiet like the stars above them.